Finally, I can get rid of this trash. My mother-in-law, Emily, spat those venomous words with a cold, disdainful glare that made me feel utterly insignificant. I stood frozen, her cruel words ringing in my ears. For 7 long years, I had endured her contempt, always telling myself that things might change. But this morning shattered that fragile hope. When I told my husband, Mark, I wanted a divorce, Emily pounced with the full force of her bitterness, unleashing a barrage of insults that laid bare her true feelings. It was painfully clear I was never part of this family in her eyes. Desperately, I turned to Mark, clinging to the faint hope that he might defend me, that he might see the hurt in my eyes and stand by me. But instead, his icy words cut deeper than Emily's. "Mom's right," he said with a shrug. "You're useless, just leave already." His gaze mirrored hers, cold, unfeeling, final. In that moment, something in me shifted, a calmness swept over me, extinguishing the fire of humiliation and despair. It was as if I was finally seeing the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. 7 years of misery, 7 years of trying to prove my worth to people who would never see it. "I understand now," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "If even my husband doesn't see value in me, then there's no reason for me to stay. My presence here only causes harm, to me and to everyone else." It was the first time I truly felt the strength of my decision. Yesterday, I had reached out for help, sensing the end was near. Now, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. I ignored the hateful shouts behind me, Emily's and Mark's voices, blending into a single cruel cacophony. Calmly, I walked to the door, my hand steady as I unlatched the chain. As I opened the door, the shouting stopped abruptly, swallowed by a heavy silence. "My name is Sarah, I'm 33 years old, a stay-at-home mom. Life has never been easy, and my marriage was no exception. Growing up, I learned early that love could be fragile. My parents divorced when I was in elementary school, a moment that shaped my childhood. "I'm sorry, Sarah," my father had said one evening when I was just 8 years old. "From now on, your mom and I will live apart." I stared at him, confused and heartbroken. "But Mom and Dad, you get along so well," I protested. "Why would you say something like that?" My mom gently stroked my hair, trying to soothe me. "Sweetheart, it's already been decided," she said softly, "but we both love you very much. You'll stay with me, and Dad will visit whenever he can." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I clung to my father. "I don't want to be away from Dad. Will I ever see you again?" He hugged me tightly, his voice trembling. "Of course, you will. I'll always visit, I promise." Though I didn't fully understand why they couldn't be together, their reassurance comforted me. True to their word, my parents arranged regular visits. Despite living apart, I still felt like I had a family. We moved into my grandparents' house, where they helped raise me while my mom worked long hours. My grandparents loved me deeply, and they tried to fill the gaps left by my parents' separation. "Your mom isn't a bad person," they would tell me. "She loves you very much." "That's right," my grandma would add, "and we'll always be here for you, sweetheart." Their love was unwavering, but it couldn't completely fill the void. I didn't have the heart to tell them how lonely I truly felt. It would have broken theirs. Years later, my father explained their divorce. "Your mom and I loved each other, Sarah," he said, "but certain circumstances made it impossible to stay together." Knowing their separation wasn't born out of hatred gave me hope. Though I carried the wounds of that time, I believed that love could still exist, even when things fell apart. After graduating college, I got a job at a large department store, following in my mother's footsteps. I thought working in the same industry might help me understand her better. Even though our relationship often felt distant, I threw myself into my career, hoping to find clarity. 3 years later, the store's owner introduced me to his son, Mark. "Sarah, you're such a hard worker," he said. "I'd love for you to meet my son. Who knows, maybe you'll be perfect for each other." I was hesitant about marriage, but his insistence led to a formal meeting. Mark was set to inherit the family business, and his father saw me as an ideal match. During our first conversations, I shared my fears about marriage and my struggles with trust, shaped by my parents' divorce. Mark listened patiently. "Your mom sounds like an amazing woman," he said. "She must love you deeply, even if it didn't always show." His understanding drew me in. "I felt lonely as a child too," he confessed. "My parents were always busy. That's why I know we can build a loving family together." His sincerity reassured me, and I let myself believe him. Before long, we were engaged. After our wedding, we moved into a beautiful home arranged by Mark's parents. I thought we were starting the perfect chapter of our lives. A year later, I found out I was pregnant. Mark and his parents were thrilled, I was overjoyed too, eager to start the family I'd always dreamed of. Looking back, that was the happiest moment in our marriage, the calm before the storm. Everything changed when we learned I was expecting a girl. I'll never forget the look on my father-in-law, David's face. When I told my father-in-law that I was expecting a girl, his face darkened, and his demeanor shifted. It was as if he saw me as a failure. "A girl? Why couldn't you have a boy to carry on the family name?" he said, his words as cold as his expression. Until that moment, my in-laws had treated me kindly, but now, their warmth vanished, replaced by disdain. "Oh, Mark, you really picked a disappointing wife, didn't you?" Emily, who had always been friendly, now mirrored her husband's contempt. I turned to Mark, hoping he would defend me. He didn't. No matter how many times I begged him to stand up to his parents' cruel comments, he ignored me. Soon, he stopped listening to me entirely. His silence gave his parents free rein to escalate their insults and mistreatment. When I mentioned my plan to return to my parents' home for the birth, they became even more aggressive. "You're part of this family now, Sarah," Emily snapped. "You don't have a home to return to, and being pregnant doesn't mean you can't do housework." At the time, my in-laws lived nearby, but they started spending more and more time at our house, treating it as if it were their own. Despite my nausea and constant fatigue, Emily insisted I continue with all the chores. "Pregnancy isn't an illness, dear," she'd say. "Housework is the duty of a wife." One day, overwhelmed and unwell, I folded the laundry imperfectly, and Emily seized the chance to criticize. "You're folding it all wrong, it'll wrinkle by the time we wear it," she snapped. Exhausted, I responded without thinking, "I'll fix it later." Emily's face turned red with anger. "How dare you talk back to me, you insolent girl?" From that point, her treatment of me grew even worse. Still, I held on. I endured her harshness and eventually gave birth to my daughter, but even then, I wasn't allowed to contact my own mother. My in-laws insisted they would take care of everything. Later, I discovered they had told my mother not to worry, assuring her they would handle everything on my behalf. Instead, I spent those early days of motherhood lonely and isolated, longing for my family's support. When I returned home from the hospital, I was met with another shock. My in-laws had moved into our house without my consent. Worse, they had taken over the nursery I had lovingly prepared for my baby, relegating my newborn and me to a small, cluttered storage room. Despite my fragile condition after giving birth, they treated me like a servant, demanding I cook and clean while they lounged. To outsiders, they painted a different picture. "Our poor daughter-in-law is still recovering," they would say. "We moved in to help her." In reality, they did nothing to help. Mark, who had taken paternity leave, spent his time out with his parents, ignoring me and our baby. He showed no interest in his daughter and acted as if neither of us mattered. On weekends, he often stayed out all night, and I began to suspect his indifference wasn't just about our family, there might be someone else. The thought of divorce crossed my mind, but I pushed it away. I didn't want my daughter to experience the same loneliness I had felt growing up. I believed if I endured the hardship, I could protect her. But I was wrong. My in-laws' obsession with appearances meant they treated me and my daughter well in front of others, creating the illusion of a perfect family. Neighbors admired them, praising how kind they were and how much my husband seemed to care for us. It was all a facade. Then, one day, Mark began pressuring me to have a second child. "We need a son to carry on the family name," he insisted. "People are starting to ask about it. We better get on it." His parents joined in, berating me. "You can't even give us a son or manage the house properly." Emily sneered. "Why did we even let you marry Mark? You're such a disappointment." Despite everything, I tried my best to care for my daughter and shield her from the toxicity around us. By the time she turned 7, my in-laws and husband had all but ignored her. She was terrified of them, shrinking in fear whenever they raised their voices. I showered her with love, hoping it would be enough. But then something happened that finally broke me. One morning, while I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, I heard my daughter crying upstairs. Her cries were unusual. She rarely went to the second floor, where my in-laws stayed. Alarmed, I rushed upstairs. At the top of the stairs, I saw Emily towering over my daughter, her hand raised, ready to strike. "Emily!" I screamed, running to my daughter and pulling her into my arms. My little girl clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. I turned to Emily, my heart pounding with fury and fear. "What were you trying to do to my daughter?" I demanded. Emily clicked her tongue dismissively. "Nothing." Without another word, she turned and walked away as if nothing had happened. Just then, Mark stepped out of the bedroom, his face twisted with irritation. "Mark," I cried. Your mother just tried to hit our daughter. He sighed, clicking his tongue, just like his mother. What did Katie do to upset her? It's probably your fault for not raising her right. Stop bothering me with this nonsense. Without waiting for a response, he walked away, leaving me standing there with my sobbing child in my arms. We retreated to the small storage room we'd been forced to live in since her birth. I sat on the bed, stroking Katie's hair to calm her as my heart raced with anger and despair. Sweetheart, what happened? Can you tell Mommy? Through her tears, Katie explained. Emily had called her upstairs, away from me, and threatened her. When Katie hesitated, Emily used a treasured possession, a handkerchief I had embroidered with her initials, as bait. Grandma took this from me, Katie said, handing me the small, torn piece of fabric. She said if I didn't come upstairs, I wouldn't get it back. My heart shattered. That handkerchief wasn't just a piece of cloth, it was something my daughter cherished, a symbol of my love for her, and Emily had used it to manipulate her. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay any longer. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had to protect my daughter, no matter the cost. I hugged my daughter tightly, overwhelmed with relief that I had reached her in time. The thought of what could have happened if I hadn't made it chilled me to the core. That moment was a turning point. I couldn't let this nightmare continue. I couldn't keep subjecting my daughter to such a toxic environment. That same day, I called my mother and told her everything. She was horrified but immediately offered to take Katie in. I dropped Katie off at school, packed a few of her belongings, and drove to my mother's house. I knew she would be safe there. That evening, I decided it was time to confront my husband and in-laws. As I approached the living room, I heard their voices and froze. What I overheard made my blood run cold. You should have been more careful, Mom. This morning was too close. I didn't think Sarah would come running so fast, Mark said. I thought I had more time, Emily replied dismissively. Their tone was casual, as if discussing a minor inconvenience, not the horrifying reality of what they had tried to do. Well, if you're going to pull something like that, at least be discreet. We don't want anyone finding out, Mark added with a sneer. Maybe next time, we'll make her pull weeds in the heat. That'll teach her, Emily said with a cold laugh. My heart raced as the realization washed over me. They were conspiring to harm my daughter, and they didn't even care. All the years I had endured their cruelty, telling myself it was for Katie's sake, suddenly felt like a lie. My daughter deserved better than this. She deserved love, safety, and peace, none of which existed in this house. I made up my mind right then. It was time to leave. I called my father and told him everything. He was furious, but he promised to help. As I packed my belongings, I remembered a conversation I'd had with Katie that morning. Katie, would you be okay if Mommy and Daddy lived in different places? I had asked gently. Yes, Mommy, I want that. I want to live with you, she replied without hesitation. Her honesty hit me like a bolt of lightning. I had been so blind to her pain, focusing only on enduring mine. She had suffered just as much, if not more, and had been hiding it just like I had. That evening, the doorbell rang just as my husband and in-laws were shouting at me to leave. I ignored their insults and calmly walked to the door. When I opened it, my father stood there, his presence a calm but firm anchor. Sarah, I'm here to take you home. Let's go, he said. The moment my husband saw my father, his smug expression turned to panic. What are you doing here? Mark stammered. It's been a long time, Mark. I'm here for my daughter, my father said, his voice steady but simmering with restrained anger. Mr. Johnson, wait, there must be some misunderstanding, Mark's father interjected, his tone desperate. There's no misunderstanding, my father replied, cutting him off. I've heard everything. This ends now. Mark and his parents froze, finally grasping the gravity of the situation. What they had always dismissed was that my father was a respected and influential figure in the business world, and, more importantly, he had been their store's largest supplier. It's unfortunate, my father continued, but given the circumstances, I'll have to reconsider doing business with you moving forward. The color drained from their faces. Mark's father stammered, Please, Mr. Johnson, this is all a misunderstanding. Sarah is just upset. My father raised a hand, silencing him. Enough. I've seen how you've treated my daughter and granddaughter. I will not allow it to continue. He turned to me, his expression softening. Sarah, let's go. Without another word, my father took my bags and walked me out the door. As we reached his car, I could hear Mark and his parents scrambling, their voices pleading for forgiveness, but I didn't look back. When we arrived at my parents' house, my mother was waiting with open arms. She hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I should have been there for you sooner," she said. "No, Mom, I'm sorry. I should have come to you for help a long time ago," I replied, the tears flowing freely now. For the first time in years, I felt safe. My parents reassured me that everything would be okay. Over the next few weeks, my father helped me finalize the divorce, ensuring Mark would pay child support and alimony. Katie and I stayed with my parents during this time, and slowly, life began to feel normal again. Katie started a new school and quickly adjusted, making new friends and laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Meanwhile, I found a new purpose working for my mother's jewelry design business. To my surprise, I had a knack for design, and with her guidance, I began building a career. Months later, Mark tried to cause trouble one last time. He showed up at Katie's school, claiming to be her father and demanding to take her home. The school called me immediately, and I rushed over. When I arrived, I barely recognized him, disheveled and desperate. He looked like a shadow of the man I once knew. "Sarah, we need to talk," he pleaded. "I've lost everything, my parents, the store, the house. We can fix this, for Katie's sake." I saw through him instantly. He didn't care about us, he cared about regaining his comfortable life. "We're not getting back together, Mark. It's over," I said firmly. "You're making a mistake. You need me," he snapped, his desperation turning to anger. "I don't need you, Mark. I never did. Katie and I are doing just fine without you," I replied, and with that, I walked away. That was the last time I saw him. In the years that followed, Katie and I built a new life. She thrived in her new school, and I found success in my mother's business. One day, Katie told my father she wanted to travel the world with him. "You'll need to learn fluent Japanese first," he teased. "I'm already working on it, Grandpa," she replied with a grin. For the first time in years, our lives were filled with peace, love, and laughter. We were finally free, and that was enough for me.